The red and blue lights bounced off my windows, flashing across my lawn like I'd just robbed a bank. The cops stood by their cruiser hands on their belts waiting for me to step outside. All because of one thing, a mailbox. A slate gray mailbox that the HOA claimed violated community standards. What they didn't know was that I wasn't under their HOA at all. And what they really didn't know was that I owned the ground they were standing on. When I first moved to Oakrest Meadows, I thought I'd found peace. Every lawn was perfectly trimmed, fences white, and uniform neighbors smiled just enough to seem polite, but never long enough to be real. It looked like a postcard version of paradise. I'm an engineer, mid-30s, the kind of guy who likes quiet projects and a clean yard. The house came through a county auction, a foreclosure nobody wanted because the paperwork was messy. I didn't care. I liked fixing things. What I didn't realize was that in Oakrest, Meadows fixing things wasn't allowed unless it matched the rulebook written by one woman, Mara Green. Mara was the self-appointed queen of the HOA. Sun visor, clipboard, that kind of smile that feels more like a warning. Her right-hand man, Doug Reeves, followed her around with a tape measure like a squire carrying a sword. My first week there, I got a note taped to my garage door. Trash bins must be hidden from street view. 2 days later. Your porch light exceeds wattage limits. I hadn't even unpacked and already they were patrolling my house like border guards. I laughed it off at first. Then came the mailbox. It was slate gray, modern, simple, nothing offensive about it. But according to Mara, it was a clear violation of Section 5D unauthorized mailbox design. She said it like I'd vandalized the Statue of Liberty. I told her calmly, "That's fine. I'm not under your HOA." Her face froze. Then she actually laughed, this sharp, humorless sound. "Every home on this street is under the HOA." "Not mine," I said. "You might want to check your map." Doug snorted, muttered something about smartasses, and Mara said, "We'll call the authorities." "Go ahead." And she did. 10 minutes later, a patrol car turned the corner. Neighbors peeked through blinds, cameras out, whispering like I was the villain of a true crime show. The officer stepped out, hand resting casually on his belt, and asked what was going on. I explained. Mara interrupted. He listened, then shrugged. "This sounds like a civil issue, ma'am," he said, and left. You'd think that would have been the end of it. It wasn't. The next day, an official HOA notice appeared in my mailbox. Failure to comply will result in fines of $75 per day. I'd barely finished reading before my phone pinged an email from Mara herself, warning me that further non-compliance may result in legal escalation. I sat on my porch that night staring at that stupid mailbox and thought, this is insane. Still, a part of me wondered if maybe they were right. Maybe I'd missed something in the deed, some clause tying me to their kingdom of beige conformity. So I did what any engineer would. I checked the data. I pulled up the county's property map and zoomed in on my lot. And there it was, a faint gray outline showing the HOA's boundary, stopping 27 feet short of my property line. 27 feet. I called the county office to confirm. A clerk named Janet looked it up and said, "Nope, your parcel isn't under the Oakrest Meadows HOA. Never has been. You're technically in the unincorporated county zone." That was the first good laugh I'd had in weeks, but relief didn't last long. By that evening, Mara emailed again citing a community annexation clause that supposedly extended HOA jurisdiction to adjoining parcels with visible frontage. It wasn't law, it was fantasy printed on letterhead. Still, she doubled down. The fines kept coming. $75, then $150, then $225. That's when I started documenting everything. Photos, letters, timestamps, printed emails, all in a folder labeled HOA Nonsense. Within days, the harassment ramped up. Doug stood outside measuring my lawn height while snapping photos of my driveway. Someone posted on the neighborhood forum, "Non-compliant property threatens Oakrest's image." A blurry photo of my yard, my house circulated online. I became the community pariah. When I waved to neighbors, they'd cross the street. One morning, I found a note in my mailbox. They did this to the Wagners too. Don't back down. For the first time, I felt the crack of doubt. Sitting in my living room surrounded by letters and threats, I wondered if maybe I should just repaint the damn mailbox. Was it really worth it? One color of paint for peace. I almost picked up the phone to call Mara, but then I saw the stack of letters again, each signed with her full name like a royal decree. That wasn't peace. That was submission. I opened the HOA charter online and started digging. Page after page of bylaws, revisions, amendments. Then I saw it. Annexation proposal, pending submission, 2018. Pending. 6 years old. Never approved. Meaning everything they'd been enforcing past their original boundary, including my house, was built on nothing. The next morning I drove to the county register's office. The man there, gray-haired and amused, found the record. Oakrest Meadows, he said, last legal boundary update 2010. No extensions approved. Then he leaned back, smirking. Let me guess, they're still trying to fine you. I nodded. He chuckled. They always forget the law doesn't bend for clipboards. He printed me a certified map with the county seal. As he handed it over, I noticed something else, thin dotted lines running through my lot. Utility easements. Turns out the HOA's water lines, fiber cables, even their decorative sign out front, all cut across my land. For the first time, I realized I wasn't powerless. I had leverage. That Friday, the HOA called a mandatory compliance hearing. They printed flyers, slipped them under every door, turning my driveway into a public courtroom. When I stepped outside, there were folding chairs, neighbors watching, and Mara at a podium with her microphone screeching. Doug stood beside her like a bailiff holding a binder full of evidence. Mr. Carter, Mara announced, you've repeatedly refused to comply with community standards. Today we'll review your violations. Before we start, I said calm as I could, which recorded covenant gives you the authority to do that. She blinked. All of them. That's not an answer. I pulled the certified map from my folder and held it up. Your last valid filing was 2010. No annexation, no expansion. My property sits 27 feet outside your jurisdiction, which means none of your rules apply to me. The officer standing by his cruiser stepped closer. Mara's face went red. Doug stammered, but everyone follows the rules. Following doesn't make it legal, I said. It just means no one checked. The officer took my papers, studied them, then nodded. He's right, he said plainly. This property isn't under HOA control. You could have heard a pin drop. Mara's lips trembled. We'll pursue annexation retroactively. Good luck, I said. The county rejected that 6 years ago. A ripple of laughter spread through the crowd. The officer turned to Mara and said, being in charge doesn't make something legal, ma'am. Paperwork does. That line hit like thunder. Even Doug flinched. This meeting is over, Mara snapped. But no one moved, not even her board members. When the officer handed my documents back, he leaned in slightly and said quietly, document everything. If they keep harassing you, call us. I already am, I said. That night, for the first time, Oakrest Meadows was silent. No patrol SUVs, no notes on my door, just silence thick enough to hear the sprinklers down the block. But I knew Mara wasn't done. People like her never quit. They regroup. So did I. Over the next week, I combed through county auction listings and found something incredible. 3 small parcels of land tied to the old developer, a retention pond, a walking path, and the strip of land under the HOA clubhouse. All of them had lapsed into foreclosure years ago. No one noticed. No one paid taxes. I did. By Thursday, those parcels were mine legally fully with stamps and signatures. When the clerk asked if I knew what I was doing, I said, oh, I know exactly what I'm doing. Saturday came the HOA's next meeting inside their precious clubhouse. I walked in with a man in a tan suit, my lawyer, and a deputy from the sheriff's office. The moment Mara saw me, her eyes narrowed. Mr. Carter, she said coldly, attendance is for active HOA members only. Good, I said. I'm not here as a member. I'm here as your landlord. The room went dead silent. I set 3 folders on the table, each labeled with a parcel number. These are deeds, I said. As of last week, I own the land beneath this building, the park, and the walkway, which means you've been operating on private property, mine. Mara laughed short and disbelieving. My lawyer opened the folders and slid the certified copies across the table. The deputy nodded. "Verified," he said. "County records are clear." Doug looked pale. "That's impossible. Those are community properties." "Not according to the county," my lawyer said. "Your developer never completed the transfer. When the company went bankrupt, ownership reverted to the county. Mr. Carter bought them fair and square." Mara's voice cracked. "You can't just take that from us." I leaned forward. "I didn't take anything. You just never owned it." Laughter rippled through the crowd, quiet at first, then louder. For years they'd all been afraid of her clipboard. Now she looked small behind it. The deputy crossed his arms. "Continuing to hold meetings or collect dues on property you don't own could be considered trespassing." Mara's jaw dropped. She looked around the room, but no one defended her. Even Doug sank into his chair. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. I just stood there, steady calm. "All I want," I said, "is for this HOA to dissolve and stop threatening people with rules that were never legal." Silence. Then from the back row, Betty Walsh, one of the oldest neighbors, spoke up. "Maybe that's the best thing that could happen here." Applause started. Small at first, then building. The sound filled the hall. Mara tried to shout over it, but her voice was lost in the noise. The deputy gave her a slow nod. "Ma'am, it's over." She looked at me, shaking. "You think this is funny? You think you humiliated me?" I shook my head. "No. You did that yourself the day you called the cops on your own neighbor instead of checking a map." Her face went pale. Doug gathered the binders. They walked out together, silent. And just like that, the reign of the HOA ended not with an explosion, but with a round of applause and sunlight through the windows. As I stepped outside, the air felt different. Lighter. Neighbors who'd once avoided me now smiled. The officer climbed into his cruiser, nodded, and said, "Guess the law finally mowed their lawn." I laughed. I didn't celebrate. I didn't need to. Watching truth take its place was enough. And that's how it ended, how a gray mailbox started a war, and how law ended it. Because sometimes control hides behind good manners and bylaws. But truth doesn't need permission.